Okay, so you may be wondering why I'm up here twice on the screen. Well, I'm going to address this issue of porn addiction. Again, this will be my 8th video relating to pornography, and there's a playlist, so you can find that up here. And this on the screen is a video I made in February 22nd, 2022. So over a year ago, almost a year and a half coming up on it. And in this, I read about a study that was done by a secular organization where they demonstrate that porn actually alters your brain. Okay? And yes, I read it to scare you, because you need something in order to sober you up to stop your porn addiction. So then I'm going to also go through a part of a clip by Daily Wire, Michael Knowles. And I'm going to critique it. It's not just Michael. Michael is interviewing someone who is head of a feminist website who is talking about this hypno-porn and sissy porn that I've talked about before in this other video over a year ago. So I hope that this helps sober you up. Those of you who don't have a problem with pornography, but you have sons, for example, or you have brothers, or someone else who does have some problem with pornography, or you might suspect that they do, or they may be tempted by it, then you can point them to that video and this video that you're watching right now, or the whole playlist on pornography that has 7, which will, by the time you've watched this, have 8 videos in it that are substantial and useful. Now, let's get on with this. And this is called Pornography Addiction in the Brain. It was published in 2017. It says here, research has been conducted about how pornography affects the brain. More than 10 years ago, pornography was deemed a erototoxin, the theory being that the brain itself may be damaged while watching porn. Now, this is going to be very interesting. Right? It's not a very long article. It's very short, but it's very interesting. And if this doesn't scare you enough to stop pornography, I don't know what would stop you. All right, so it was deemed an erototoxin, the theory being that the brain itself may be damaged while watching porn. This is in 2017 he's writing this. Speculation ensued that future brain studies may reveal the surge of neurochemicals and hormones were released. It's not, I guess, is a mistake in the grammar. Were released when someone watches porn and has negative effects on the brain. Recent studies are coming to light which validate this connection. That's in 2017. So prior to that, they had this theory. And the studies in 2017 were starting to prove that it's true. Brain scans. Valerie Voon, V-O-O-N, conducted research for a documentary on the effects of porn on the brain. It led her to conclude that the brains of habitual users of porn show similarities to brains of alcoholics. So when Paul says, do not be intoxicated, it applies to pornography as well, not only alcoholism. All right, shows similarities to brains of alcoholics. A brain structure called the ventral striatum plays a significant role in the reward system of the brain, or reward pathways. It is the same part which lights up when an alcoholic sees a photo of a drink. The cingulate cortex is weakened over time by viewing porn, which is the region of the brain responsible for moral and ethical decision-making and willpower. All right, this is very important. I want you to pay close attention at this point, because he said that what they identified was that the central region for making moral decisions is weakened over time by exposure to pornography. They've demonstrated this. This is not speculation, okay? It's the control center for the will. The ability to do what you know you should do. the ability to not do what you know that you should not do. It's the part of the brain that allows us to be moral beings. So moral agency, okay? That's what what I'm talking about, he's talking about, okay? So now let's go ahead and have a look at, there's a lot more to this video that's really interesting and very useful. So I recommend it, I highly recommend it. Go watch it. Now we're on with Michael Knowles.
Genevieve Gluck, a women's rights campaigner, founder of Redux. It is an unapologetically pro-woman outlet focused on gender identity. And Genevieve can shed some light on this phenomenon that frankly, as I've said on the show, I don't even want to look into, because I have been told, and then I've read on different fora that talk about this phenomenon, that there is a kind of pornography that is apparently a driver of the transgender identity that is so perverse that it constitutes a kind of hypnosis where men will say, I was a normal guy, I lived to be 41, 42, and I was basically normal, but then I fell into this kind of pornography and it essentially melted my brain. I had a nervous breakdown. Now I think that I'm a woman. So rather than have to expose myself to that, and then, I'll have to go to confession, potentially my brain gets melted, I can just talk to Genevieve about it. Genevieve, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Can you just give not only the audience, but me a rundown? What is, among all of the types of pornography that lead to transgenderism, what is this hypnosis pornography?
Well, you touched on a good point there. There are many types of pornography that are sort of involved with the transgender movement. But hypnosis pornography is a little bit different in that it incorporates your lifestyle. So typically when we think of pornography, we think of it as something that is passive, that you're sort of watching. But this type, it asks you to sort of change your behavior, change the way you dress, even to start taking hormones. And it's...
So remind yourself, when you look at those that kind of look like women on the screen, they're not women. They're men. Those are men dressed like women. The two that were on their knees hugging, those are two men. The one that's dressed like a woman and has shaved his legs is a man. And so when you look at those, you have to keep telling yourself in your head, when you look at them, no matter how much they look like a woman, that is a man. That is a man. That is a man. And you need to keep telling yourself, because the whole point is to trick you, deceive you, create a decoy that they are a woman when they are actually physically, biologically a man. So it's a lie. And the Bible says in Revelation 21:8 that this is Jesus speaking at the end of the book, in the end of time. He says, all liars will have their place in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Go read it. I just quoted it to you from the New King James Version. And just so that you know that I didn't misquote it for some reason, I'll read it right here. I'll read the whole thing with the whole list. But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, liars are grouped in with murderers. Sexually immoral, that includes those who dress like women who are men, those who have sex with men who are men, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. This is the end of the book. It's the end of the Bible. And it's Jesus speaking. It's the last warning to you. If you're living this lie, you're a man dressing like a woman, you'd better stop. This may be your last warning. You may not get another warning. Let's go on to listening to her.
It's sometimes called sissy hypno, so that's short for sissification, hypnosis, pornography. And, I myself, I have personally been somewhat mocked for the suggestion that this is having a powerful impact on men. However, trans activists themselves will say things like it influenced them. There's a famous academic who wrote a book in 2019. His name is Andrea Long Chu, and the name of his book is Females. And in that book, he explicitly states that sissy porn and hypnosis made him start identifying as transgender. So what this incorporates is, as you might imagine, in the hypnosis style, things like repeated mantras, counting down, and probably some of the worst, most regressive stereotypes about women that you can possibly imagine.
So what she means by counting down is anticipation of reward. So, there will be a countdown. You need to do this. I won't mention it. It's disgusting. In 10, at the count from 10. So they'll go 10, and they'll show all kinds of sick porn. 9, all kinds of sick porn. 8, and they go all the way down, and you're anticipating getting to the 1, and then right after that saying, okay, now do it, right? And so this anticipation is part of the training and the embedding of behavior into your reward system, okay? That's what she's talking about. She doesn't go into the detail because I don't think she completely fully understands how the mechanism works, but she understands the mechanism is there and that it does work.
Counting down, and probably some of the worst, most regressive stereotypes about women that you can possibly imagine. The speaker will say to the listener or viewer, you are a dumb bimbo slut. You want to be a girl. You want to be a bimbo. Just all of that sort of terrible, insulting, degrading terminology and language, which is part of the point. It's part of the thrill.
So she calls it the thrill, but it's not really for thrill, not that part. That's for degradation. It's to break down the psyche. It's to break down the identity as a man so that you become submissive to the voice in the video. And there are other videos as well about being a pornosexual and about being a slave to the porn on your screen. They say that in the videos. And they are overt with it at that point. So they are actually training the person watching the video to be a slave to the porn video itself. Not to any one, not to any certain voice or certain star, porn star or anything, but to be a slave to the porn video on the screen. That's what they are actually saying out loud and drilling into the person's head as they're giving them these mechanisms that end in a reward, reinforcing it. Let's keep going.
Which is part of the point. It's part of the thrill. It's that it's taboo, that it's degrading, that's humiliating.
So I guess the question that I have is...
The taboo is correct also. Is it, and that's how they get into it. And he's going to ask this question. Is that they will start out with normal, what's called normal, or soft porn. And then the algorithm, as he rightly refers to, will feed them, 1 or 2 harder porn videos. And they don't go for that until they're bored with what they're watching. And they've seen so many of them at that level that they're bored with that level, and they see that and they go, maybe I'll try it, right? And they go there, and then of course it feeds them tons of others like that on that level, and they watch that, and there's this stimulation, there's this excitement. Or maybe that is one that's too hard for them. They look over there, they find one that's more palatable to them, and then go for that. And that's the gateway into that next level. And then all they're watching are that next level. If they see any soft porn, they don't go for it because for them it's boring, for them it's normal, for them it's not hard enough.
Is it the chicken or the egg? Are men who already have these sexual confusion issues, are they seeking out this kind of pornography, or are they looking at relatively more tame pornography, and then the algorithm and their own addiction takes them progressively into this realm where they I can't imagine anybody... I can at least intellectually understand all sorts of weird sex stuff, but I can't imagine anybody intentionally looking up a kind of pornography that would hypnotize them, degrade them, and make them, chop off their genitals. That is very difficult for me to grasp. So which is it?
It's many things. So first of all, I spoke with some of these men who were trying to escape this addiction. It's sort of coupled. The hypnosis pornography is also coupled with the transgender pornography. You will very rarely find anyone who's just exclusively using one. It's typically both.
All right, now this is important. Now the hypno and sissy pornography is one kind or area of pornography, but then there's transgender pornography, where the actors, there's at least one actor who is, they look like a female, but they've got a penis. And they'll have breasts, but they've got a penis. And they're naked, of course, and they're having sex with each other. And it could be just only transgender actors in it, or it could be one transgender and a girl or a guy, or a girl and a guy, and all kinds of stuff like this. I don't want you to imagine it. I'm not trying to do that, right? But I'm just trying to give you the picture of what is transgender pornography. So you understand when she says that, if someone is involved in one, they're not just involved in one, they're involved in both. They're watching both kinds intermixed. This one, then this one, little that, little this. They're both driving the person to the same goal, to make them transgender, or at least to weaken and destroy their heterosexuality.
I rarely find anyone who's just exclusively using one. It's typically both. And in a lot of cases with the men that I've talked to, I did a survey last year with some of these men who were trying to quit. And very often they started watching pornography at a very young age. I mean, around 12 or 13. And so the nature of pornography is to escalate. You need to keep seeking out greater taboos and such to get the same thrill, essentially.
So this is why it's so important to pay close attention to your young boys and to keep them away from pornography. No matter what you can do, you need to shelter them and protect them from that at the early young ages, so that they are trained to know, until they have a formation of their moral agency so that it is strong and can stand on its own, which only happens when you're about 21 years old. And you're probably going to argue with that, say, no, it's not. It's really not. It can be as early as 18, but some of you might say 16. No, it's not. Remember back to when you were 16 years old, men, and you tell me that you had the strength of a guaranteed, bona fide man in you, to where you could make a moral decision and stand on it and give the strength to others as well. You couldn't, not at 16. After you pass 18, you start to see that, right? But it's not there yet. 21, that's when it starts to show up, okay? So when they're 12 or 13, they are sheep, lambs, vulnerable to the wolves. You cannot let the wolves near them. She's talking about men who are exposed to pornography at 12 or 13 years old. And they ended up trapped in the hypno and sissy pornography and transgender pornography. These are men that she's spoken with.
Escalate. You need to keep seeking out greater taboos and such to get the same thrill, essentially.
Like any drug, you start out, you have
like
a drink or
drug.
two, right? And then you need 10 drinks, or you need, heroin or something. So porn is just like that.
Exactly. And so in some cases, they had seen it as children, as 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. Many of them had not sought it out personally for themselves. They had sort of stumbled upon it by accident, which is a trend we just see with pornography in general, and children viewing it, is that they often don't seek it out, but it's presented to them through things like social media.
This is a problem. When there's no distinction in the internet browsing experience between adults and children, this is a problem. And I know that in the early days of the internet, that there were attempts made to try to put up filters and blocks and all this kind of stuff, and kids would get on and then find, do Google searches of how to get around adult protection blocks or child protection blocks, however it's worded, and they would then figure out how to get around them. Or they'd go over to their friend's house whose parents were more lenient and didn't care, and they'd get on and be exposed to pornography in the course of just normal browsing. Or they'd seek it out. So, all right, let's keep going here.
There's also men who were just into pornography and then the escalation continued. Some of them were into cross-dressing, for example, and it just sort of fell into their laps in that way.
So the first time that I was exposed to pornography was when I found a Playboy calendar, Playmate calendar, under my brother's mattress. He was 3.5 years older. That was the first time I was exposed to pornography. And I remember the second time as well, when we were cleaning out the trailer where my great uncle used to live. He and my great aunt, they were married, but she couldn't stand living with him because he was a slob. He was a pig. And so she bought him a trailer because she was very rich, Jewish woman. And so she bought him a trailer and put it in next to the house, and he would live there and come in and eat, and they would spend time together. But he would actually live there, and it was a filthy, filthy place. I mean, since he had died, it was just stacked up on the floor with dirty clothes and dirty bedding. The bed was like filthy and had stains, on it, and it smelled of urine and I don't remember feces, but urine, I remember that. And there was pornography everywhere. It was soft porn, like Playmate and Playboy and things like that. But there was pornography everywhere. I remember one magazine called We, and on the front was some girl who was pretending to be a farmer girl, but she had no top on, just the overalls, right, with the straps. And I remember that. See, even years later, that's embedded in my head. I can even see it in my head. It's in my memory. And that's what happens with porn. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. It is there. It's part of you. So I shouldn't have been exposed to that. My father, who had asked me to help him clean out the trailer, should have checked first, beforehand, and taken that out. But he hadn't. I don't know if he expected to find it there, but he should have checked ahead of time. It was an adult male who, the wife couldn't stand to live with him because he was a slob, probably because he was using pornography. All right, let's keep going here.
But there's also the problem of the algorithm. So in cases where this might be on social media, for example, it is on YouTube. There's plenty of these kinds of things on YouTube even that are not age restricted. And so if you follow the algorithm, it keeps feeding you the same type of content, right? So if you view one, then it starts to recommend it to you over and over again. And this can cause sort of this addiction. And pornography is known to be...
Well, that's true of the algorithm in general. Is that the algorithm with Google, whether it's on YouTube or on Google search, the algorithm is designed to keep you hooked on the thing that you've looked at. So if I look at something on YouTube, for example, because I think that it's bad and it's wrong, I'm going to get flooded with recommendations next time. And that happens very many times. And it's so frustrating. How in the world do you turn that off? Well, if it's just one site or one channel that is recommending, many of the videos that you're offended by, you can just say, don't recommend this channel. You go to the little 3 dots, click it and drop down and it says not interested, or it says don't recommend this channel. And so you can say not interested on just that video if you want to see other videos from that channel. But if that channel has a habit of putting out the videos that offend you, then say, do not recommend this channel, okay? And you won't see videos from that, or you shouldn't see videos from that channel.
And pornography is known to be kind of dissociating in that it dissociates from your body and yourself and can cause actual body dysmorphia. So that's a known side effect of pornography addiction, especially among men, that it can cause genital dysmorphia.
So dysmorphia is where you imagine yourself different than what you are. Okay? And so one of the things that can happen, if you're watching these transgender and especially the hypno-sissy porn, is that you can have malfunction of your genitals. They can stop functioning properly. You can stop having erections as a result of it. You might even not be able to ejaculate, if I should be so rude to say this, but you need to be careful. You need to be protective of yourself and your body and your psyche and what you see and what you hear. The Bible warns us about this repeatedly.
So when you combine those things, it starts to look an awful lot like what people call gender dysphoria.
So what you're saying, that's a very interesting point. When you're having sex with somebody, not to be too crass, but I guess that's what we're talking about here, you're with another human being and you're both there in the flesh, in the room, on the bed, hopefully with your wife and, for the purpose of procreation, but you're there. It's the real person that you have a real relationship with. With pornography, it's just phantom images flickering on a screen. And so you're saying it's not even that the pornography gets in your head and tells you that you're the opposite sex. It's just the very act of looking at pornography is an act that denies the incarnational aspect of our being.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, when you're using pornography, you're having sex with yourself, essentially. And so there are cases, where men have sort of turned themselves into the pornography that they are watching. It's a bit, I don't know. It seems to me that with enough consumption of this and addiction to it, then the men themselves will try to turn themselves into the woman that they see in pornography. So there's also a kind of a pipeline through, starting out to transition and then going on to become or make your own pornography of yourself.
So let me explain this from a Christian viewpoint. Another aspect is that what is happening is that, and they say this in some of the porn, is that they tell you to worship this woman. And sometimes they'll even call her a goddess. Serious. There's a whole strain of videos where the woman is called Goddess Kyla or Goddess whatever, right? I'm just coming up with names. And she's actually called Goddess. And you're told to call her Goddess. And you're told to worship her. Or if it's porn videos with penises in it, they may say worship the penis. They use the crass word that I won't use here, right? But they'll say that, worship this, and they'll use the word for penis, the crude word for it. And so the whole point is to drive you to idolatry. And if they drive you to idolatry, especially watching a transgender, that's a man who's transitioned into looking like a woman as much as possible, even with the operation, the breasts and such. If you worship that, you're going to try to become like that. You're going to try to imitate that, emulate that, become that. The object of your affection and your lust and your adoration and your worship. Is it any wonder now that this is what happens? No, of course not. We'll watch a little bit more of this.
Wow. Now, you mentioned, this is just so shocking that I figured that I couldn't be shocked by anything at all in politics and in these radical ideologies that are being promoted now, down to pumping little kids full of hormones and castrating them. But I guess kind of the point of internet pornography is there's always something more depraved. And so I did read an analysis, I think perhaps in the Feminist Current, about how this kind of pornography is in a way a meta-pornography, because as part of the hypnosis, it mocks you and degrades you for engaging in an act that is intrinsically degrading, that is, sitting there in a room with yourself looking at pornography, which is kind of an interesting literary critique and something that I would be interested to read more about, except that it seems so perverse and soul-warping.
So she did mention that some of this pornography, they give you instructions of what to do. And that's part of the very serious, deeper danger of this kind of pornography, is that it intersects with your lifestyle outside of the fantasy world that you're viewing. They actually command you, they don't ask you, they command you to do certain things outside of this. Now, the ones that are about penises, they'll command you to go find a real man and do something with him. And this is not for women. This is for men. So you can already see that you've already engaged in some homosexual behavior, and they're trying to drive you into actual homosexual behavior in person, in physical contact. They're commanding you to. And then with the sissy porn, they're commanding you to dress like a woman. They're commanding you to walk like a woman. Serious. They command you to do these things where you, in public, among other people who know you as a man, to behave and act like a woman. And so it's trying to take it outside of this virtual world into the real world for you. So that then you're humiliated to the point where you have to try to regain some composure. And well, the only way to do that is to follow through with it. And then you shift from your group of contacts and friends who know you as a man and support you as a man to finding other contacts who are perverse like you, twisted and bent, who will support you in your twist and your bend and your perversion. And so you have to shift your social group as well. Just de facto, you have to, in order to support that psyche and the actual physical actions that you started to do to back up that fantasy world where that voice on that video commanded you to do those things, and you did them. Now you see the danger, because once you've done that, you shifted everything. When you shifted your contacts and your social support to those who are perverse like that and will support you in your perversion, you've sealed your destiny. It is very difficult to get out of that situation and to revert back to a normal man. Now, do you see the dangers of this? And this is a feminist. This is a woman who runs a feminist website. She is not a conservative Christian. And she's talking about these dangers. So I hope that you take this to heart. I hope that you men who are using that kind of pornography, you had better stop. You had better stop. And I just showed you how it is a lie. And if you continue down that road, you will go to hell. And then you will be thrown into the lake of burning sulphur, which is eternal and irreversible. You will be there forever, being tormented. That's because of God's judgment on you. You'd better stop. If you need help, if you need some support, then you write to me an email. ron.craig@therootedword.com. The rooted, ROOTED, word.com. Ron Craig, ron.craig, Ron, R-O-N, period, C-R-A-I-G, at therootedword.com. No spaces. Write to me. Say, help. Tell me what it's about, right? Because you have to stop it. And keep watching these videos here on my channel, because they will also support you. They will strengthen you against those sins. May the Lord bless you as you seek Him with all your heart.